What up, though, everybody? It's your boy Shane G. Back once again with another episode of Politics as Usual, right here on the Ethos Media Network. Please make sure that you like, you share, and you subscribe for all the latest content. Shout out to OTI, the four ladies hosting, Laura, Tierra, Calliope, Jordana, holding it down over on OTI, dropping every Wednesday. Shout out, of course, to the bar exam crew, Allie, Mr. Marcus TV, Eric G, holding it down as always on the bar exam, dropping every Monday. I know it's been a little minute. Just revamping the network, and doing a couple of different things, trying to just trying to expand, trying to grow, just trying not to be stagnant, things of that nature, So took a step back from doing politics as usual for a little minute, but I am back. So I'm here to talk about what's going on in the media right now. What's going on right now? We got these protests going on between Israel protesters versus pro-Palestine protesters. You know what I'm saying? What I want to talk about, though, regarding this subject is basically how, the media has been treating it and how people on one side of a political aisle will treat it a certain way. Y'all know the theme of the show. I like to call out the hypocrisy on both sides. You know what I'm saying? So what I noticed is that during COVID, during the Black Lives Matter protests, there was a lot of conversation about, the right to protest, freedom of speech, things of that nature. People were talking about how Donald Trump was going to be, somebody who would squash people's freedom of speech. He was anti-protester, things of that nature, right? And we're going to get into that, you know what I mean? But we got to talk about what's going on right now as far as with the Biden administration, since they're the ones who are currently in office. And these protests dealing with, anti-Israel versus anti-Palestine, that's what's going on right now. So let me pull this up for y'all. And we'll go ahead and get this going. I hope y'all been good, though, since the last time I've done the show. Definitely check out the last episode. It's on the playlist. I find that one interesting because, Tupac was speaking on things that affect us today, and he died in 1996. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like that was dope. Definitely go check that out. But so this is from AP, article by Carolyn Thompson and Marjorie Beck. And this was written, actually, it was updated today as I read this to you, April the 28th of 2024. Protests are roiling college campuses nationwide as schools with graduation ceremonies next month face demands that they cut financial ties to Israel because of the Israel-Hamas war. Many campuses were largely quiet over the weekend, but protesters on both sides of the issue shouted and shoved each other during dueling demonstrations Sunday at the University of California, Los Angeles. About 275 people were arrested on Saturday at various campuses, including Indiana University, at Bloomington, Arizona State University, and Washington University in St. Louis. The number of arrests nationwide approached 900 since New York police removed a pro-Palestinian protest encampment at Columbia University and arrested more than 100 demonstrators on April the 18th. So they're just arresting protesters. You know what I'm saying? They said there was shoving on both sides, but I'm not seeing any violence. I'm not seeing anybody getting actually hurt for them to be, arrested. So I'm curious what their explanation for that is, like why they're arresting these protesters, and then why they're able to break up whole encampments full of protesters. 275 people arrested on Saturday. Nationwide arrest 900, 100 at Columbia University just on the 18th alone. That's kind of crazy. I thought we as America were pro free speech, pro, free assembly, all those kind of things, right? I guess not, though. Since then, students have dug in at dozens of pro-Palestinian encampments around the country, prompting a range of responses from administrators, arrests and criminal charges, student suspensions, or simply continued pleas to leave. The plight of students has become a central part of protests, with both the students and a growing number of faculty demanding amnesty for protesters, an issue is whether the suspensions and legal records will follow students through their adult lives. So basically what they're saying here is right now the issue is these students are being arrested for protesting, for protesting a war, basically saying, we want our school to cut financial ties to Israel because we don't want our money to go towards supporting a war that we don't support. That's ultimately what it comes down to. We're against the Israel Palestine, we'll call it conflict, because it's not really a war, it's more of a slaughter. The conflict going on over there, we're not in favor of it. We don't want our money going towards that. So therefore, you need to cut ties to the school, or from the school to Israel, or to any lobbying groups that support Israel. That's essentially the argument that's being made, and they're being arrested for that. So now the reason I bring that up is because that's what's going on right now. But this is our current president, Joe Biden, how he feels about the protests, and essentially what he, how he feels and what he would want to see done about these protests. So this is what Biden has to say. So the Biden camp is not sweating political fallout from the latest round of campus protests. The president's team and some pollsters don't see Gaza as the primary voting issue for the younger cohort. So even though all these people are out here protesting every day, and it's mostly young people, they are going with the assumption that young people don't really care about this as much as they say they do. So they're not really paying it any attention. President Joe Biden condemned the anti-Israel protests embroiling college campuses last week, sparking backlash among those who oppose the Gaza war and raising new questions about his standing with younger voters. So he condemned the protesters, right? He's not saying, hey, you have the right to do this. You have the right to speak your mind as an American. He's saying, no, you guys are wrong for the way you feel, and you shouldn't be speaking out about it. That's what condemnation is. But so far, campaign aides say they do not see it ballooning into more of a problem for the re-election bid. Those doing the protesting, they believe, are a subset of the electorate, one that's drawn a disproportionate amount of media coverage compared to its actual political clout. So they're just doing a calculation, basically. They're like, is that something that could get us the win? So you see the issue, right? It's not even about what the person wants to accomplish who's running for president, or what they feel like is right or wrong for the country. It's just, is that issue something that's important enough for me to run on to possibly win? We're talking about millions of people dying with our assistance. That's crazy. What is happening in Gaza is not the top issue for young voters. How would he know? He's damn near 80 years old. How would he know? It's not going to be, for the vast majority of young voters, the thing that's going to determine whether they vote or how they vote. If you've watched any YouTube videos of any political commentators under the age of 40, I believe you would assess otherwise. It's not going to be, that's not how they vote, said a campaign official working on youth engagement who was granted anonymity to speak about internal thinking. The reality is that the folks that are organizing, the goal of that organizing is to make it seem that way and bring that attention to it. The Biden campaign's relative nonchalance towards the political fallout from the latest round of protests comes as polling data consistently shows him lagging with young voters and failing to meet comparable levels of support from 2020. Though still beating former President Donald Trump in polling. It has unnerved some Democrats who believe the backlash over the war in Gaza could potentially deny the president a second term. Yeah, because it is. Like, this is a huge issue. And the fact that he's not taking it serious, or he doesn't think young people are really paying attention like that, for one, it just kind of shows an antiquated way of thinking when it comes to politics. Because, first of all, young people are way more engaged in politics than they used to be. When he was coming up, when he was 18 through 24, I'm sure most people in that age group were not engaged in politics, but life is way different now. Things have gotten so much worse since the 80s, and it's really noticeable from generation to generation. People notice that people who graduated in the mid 2000s, have it rougher than people who graduated in the 90s, and the people who graduated in the 90s have it a little rougher than the people who graduated in the 80s. And going back, you see what I'm saying? Like, everybody sees it. And you can see it happening in real time. And then we have too much access to information nowadays, so we can actually look up the numbers. And people want to know why, when they're 18, or why when they're 20 and they're working, why they can barely afford to pay rent and maybe get a car. Like, people want to know why that's the case nowadays, when their parents were able to buy a house damn near off of the same salary. Like, people want to know, so they're going to look into it. So people are way more into politics, especially young people, because that's when you have the most energy to really want to make change, is when you're young. So it's all these factors that are combined that it seems like the Biden team is basically ignoring. But as much as, I like to express why Joe Biden is not for the people and why you should not be voting for him, that does not then mean that I'm pro-Trump. Because, again, as somebody who has participated in protests, I believe in the right to free speech. As somebody who does a political show on YouTube, I, of course, believe in the right to free speech. I believe in the right for somebody to say something I don't like. They have the right to say something I don't like, even, you know what I mean? Like, I believe in that, Again, my standards are the legal standards: doxing, libel, slander, threats of violence directly. That's it. So, any sort of attempt to squash or basically be against protesters, I'm pretty much always going to be against. So let's go over here to what Trump was saying during COVID, during the Black Lives Matter protests, because he's not for protests either. See, that's the thing. He was for protests when it fit him, when it was for the January 6th and, they're, trying to steal the election from me. I really beat Hillary. I really beat Joe Biden. They're stealing the election from me, all of that stuff. Like, when that was going on, he was pro protest. He was like, please come protest at the Capitol with me. But when it's something that he disagrees with, which was Black Lives Matter, again, not necessarily the organization, I'm talking about the actual movement. That's, the people who were saying, hey, police, stop killing us. Like, that part of the movement, not the organization. I have to always separate the two, because people like to purposely conflate that. Well, Black Lives Matter was corrupt. I'm talking about the movement. I'm not talking about the organization. Okay. But this is what Trump has to say, or had to say at the time, about Black Lives Matter. Speaking from the National, this is on Politico. Speaking from the National Archives, the president positioned himself as a defender of American exceptionalism against activists trying to destroy the country's sense of self. President Donald Trump leaned into the culture wars on Thursday, railing against the Black Lives Matter movement, the 1619 Project, and what he called toxic propaganda in school curriculum. We are here today to declare that we will never submit to tyranny. We will reclaim our history and our country for citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed. Trump unleashed a cascade of grievances from the National Archives Museum at an event timed to coincide with the anniversary of the signing of the U.S. Constitution in 1787. Unlike his often freewheeling rhetoric, Trump hewed closely to his prepared remarks during the speech. Left-wing mobs, this is Black Lives Matter he's talking about, left-wing mobs have torn down statues of our founders, desecrated our memorials, and carried out a campaign of violence and anarchy, Trump said. Whether it's a mob on the street or the cancel culture in the boardroom, the goal is the same: to silence dissent, to scare you out of speaking the truth, and to bully Americans into abandoning their values. So that's funny. He's basically saying, by Black Lives Matter protesters using their right to free speech, they're trying to silence your right to free speech, whoever you is. And, I'm assuming he means Republicans in this sense, or maybe white people. I don't know who he's talking to necessarily. But, I mean, yes, he throws in the up for every race and color, religion, and creed up there. But yeah, that's cover. But when he says this, left-wing mobs have torn down statues of our founders, desecrated our memorials, and carried out a campaign of violence and anarchy, who's he talking about? What was going on at the time that this article was written? This was written in 2020. What was going on? It was the Black Lives Matter protest that was going on. So what left-wing mobs is he talking about? He's talking about Black Lives Matter protesters, saying that they were carrying out a campaign of violence and anarchy. I saw way more violence from police towards protesters than I saw the other way around. I rarely saw protesters instigating violence with police. What I often saw on video was police instigating violence with protesters, and then other protesters would come and try to protect the protesters that were being beat up by the police, and then more and more cops will come, and then it would get out of control. That's what I saw way more of. And I saw a lot of video from a lot of different sources. You know, on Twitter, you get a mix of everything. You know, it's left-wing sources, right-wing sources, quote-unquote centrist sources. You get all of it. And if you curate your list a certain way and you choose not to follow an echo chamber, then you're going to get all sides of it. And what I saw was way more cops doing the fuck shit than protesters. So to spin this as if Black Lives Matter protesters were the people who were being violent, you know, that's interesting. You know what I'm saying? Because that's not at all what I saw. And that's not what most people I know saw. Even Republicans that I talked to about this weren't like, yo, they were the ones that were out there wilding during the Black. They're like, nah, the cops were out there kind of fucking up and instigating violence. Like, that's what the narrative that I am most familiar with. So basically he's saying by protesting and using your right to free speech to say, hey, we don't like the police killing black people indiscriminately, you're saying that is taking away other people's free speech. Because you conflate that with cancel culture. So a mob on the street basically saying black people are being killed disproportionately by police. Stop doing that. That is the same thing as cancel culture. Somebody gets the wrong pronoun on accident and then they get fired from their job. Like, those two things are not the same at all. So to try to conflate the two, again, it's an interesting tactic, but it's just not a reflection of reality on any level. So this is what Trump was doing. This is what Biden is doing now. So I say all of that to say that they're not, that neither one of them are free speech warriors that they pretend to be. You know what I'm saying? Elon Musk, he went on Twitter or he purchased Twitter, you know, rebranded it to X, and he's supposed to be free speech warrior guy, right? Like, that's his whole thing. Well, he was still kicking people off the platform that he disagreed with about different things. Not people who were doing anything illegal, which is what he said his standard was. He said his standard was, if it's legal, it can be said on Twitter/X. That was his standard. His standard was, if it's legal, it can be said on this platform. He's still blocking people, or not blocking people. He's still kicking people off the platform that he now owns who aren't doing illegal things. You can look this up. Like, I don't have the names right in front of me, but I am making reference to something that happened. So with all that being said, don't trust these people who, you know, unless they have a track record of showing you, you know, that they are actually, you know, they say they believe in free speech and then they actually have a track record of showing you that that is the case. Don't believe them when they say it, because most of the time they're going to flip whenever the issue impacts them. Again, Trump pro-protester when it's, hey, I need y'all to protest the results of the election. Anti-protester when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Same with Joe Biden. I don't, you know, really remember a time when he was pro-protester. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really don't even remember a time to reference for that. But we know he's anti-protester when it comes to the Israel situation. You know, follow the money. That's really all it comes down to. But I'm glad that y'all still rocking. This is the Ethos Media Network. This is Shane G. And this is, of course, Politics as Usual. And I will catch y'all next week. I'm going to be back more consistent. I'm back right every Wednesday, OTI. Every Monday, bar exam. And we're going to knock these out every Sunday. Every Sunday, y'all gonna have a new Politics as Usual to wake up to. I'm going to make sure it's ready by Sunday morning. So hold me to it. All right. I'm producing a lot of shows, though. Cut me some slack. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man. I appreciate all of y'all. Go check out the interview with Maya Milan if you haven't yet. And outside of that, we're going to catch you next week. Peace.